For 15 years, a crucial testimony remained in the shadows, ignored by authorities and forgotten by the public. But what it reveals could be the key to understanding what happened to Madeleine McCann that night in 2007. Prepare yourself. What you are about to hear today may change everything we thought we knew about this case. There are many cases in the world that challenge our understanding, but few compared to the complexity of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. That apartment in Praia da Luz, the silent night, the frantic search, all of this became the center of a mystery that spanned decades. But what almost no one knows, and what I will reveal today, is that there is a testimony that never received the attention it deserved. A report that, if analyzed at the time, could have completely changed the course of the investigations. And the question that won't leave my mind is, why? Why was this testimony ignored? Was it forgotten out of negligence or perhaps deliberately suppressed? And above all, what does it really mean for Madeleine's case? On the night of May 3rd, 2007, while Kate and Jerry McCann were dining at the Tapas Bar, a series of events occurred near apartment 5A, and that's where everything changed. Among the many witnesses that night, one reported something that seems to have escaped the spotlight for years. A local resident who regularly frequented the resort's surroundings claimed to have seen a man standing near the apartment in an attitude he described as strange. He was leaning against a wall, watching the movement, as if he were waiting for something. What makes this account even more disturbing is the description. The man seemed nervous, constantly looking around, but trying to keep his head down, as if he wanted to avoid being recognized. He was spotted around 8:45 p.m., about 30 minutes before Jane Tanner saw a man carrying a child in his arms. At the time, the testimony was considered irrelevant. The Portuguese police, overwhelmed by international pressure, were more focused on finding concrete evidence in the apartment than on following external leads. But analyzing it today, it's hard to ignore the importance of this information. What was this man doing there, so close to the McCann apartment? Was he just a passerby, or did he have a direct connection to Madeleine's disappearance? And why did the police never pursue this line of investigation? Some say the account was dismissed because it didn't seem to fit the official timeline. But it is precisely this discrepancy that should have been analyzed. If there is something we have learned from this case, it is that failures in investigations can be as impactful as the clues left behind. This man's presence has opened the door to various theories over the years. Some suggest he could have been an accomplice to the man seen by Jane Tanner, someone who was there to monitor activity before taking action. Other theories point out that he might have been the actual kidnapper, studying the location before entering the apartment. But there is also an even more disturbing possibility. What if he wasn't just observing? What if he was there to ensure that the operation proceeded without interruptions? This would raise the hypothesis that Madeleine's disappearance was part of something much larger, something meticulously planned. And what about the silence surrounding this testimony? Many believe that this information was intentionally suppressed, perhaps out of fear of harming the official narrative or due to interests that would never come to light. What makes me uneasy is thinking about how many times crucial details like this end up buried by the initial confusion of an investigation. This account, so simple on the surface, could have changed everything if it had been taken seriously at the time. Could the man described by this witness have known more than he let on? Could he still be out there, carrying a secret that could finally solve this case once and for all? The neglected testimony we mentioned is more than just a lost piece of the puzzle. It is a starting point to realize how Madeleine McCann's case was, from the beginning, marked by contradictions and inconsistencies that no one seemed capable of resolving. The first issue is the timing. According to the resident who saw a man near apartment 5A, this happened around 8:45 p.m. This is significant because this account precedes Jane Tanner's observation by 30 minutes. The man, described as slim, with short hair and wearing dark clothes, seemed to be standing near a wall, facing the apartment, staring intently at the location. He wasn't doing anything immediately attention-grabbing, but his behavior was enough to raise suspicion for those who saw him. Here begins what is most intriguing. Why would a man stand there without any apparent reason? The official investigation never deeply explored or even mentioned at the time was that the account seemed irrelevant since there was no crime reported at that point. But now, looking more carefully, this is a flaw that defies logic. If the man was there just casually, why choose that place and that time, near an apartment that minutes later would become the epicenter of a disappearance? And there's more. The resident's account does not completely align with the assumptions made about the chronology of the disappearance. According to the official timeline, Madeleine's kidnapping would have occurred between 9:05 p.m. and 10 p.m. when Kate found the bed empty. But if the described man was near the apartment before that, it could indicate that the kidnapping was premeditated and began began long before the Tapas group even suspected that something was wrong. The most alarming detail is the possible connection between this man and the figure observed by Jane Tanner later. Some experts have hypothesized that it could be the same person, while others suggest that this man could have been acting as a lookout, ensuring the area was secure for a planned action. However, what bothers me is the reason why this lead was sidelined. In cases like this, every detail matters. Every movement, every strange face, every suspicious attitude. The witness reported that he tried to speak with authorities in the following days, but what he received was a cold response. Something like, "We already have too much information to handle." Now think about this. What if this account had been taken seriously at the time? How many lives could have taken different paths if the police had connected this man to the man described carrying a child? Another disturbing question is that the witness, to this day, believes he could identify the man he saw if he found him again. This raises a new dilemma. Why wasn't there an immediate effort to create a composite sketch? The investigations focused on tangible leads, such as fingerprints and physical traces, but neglected something as fundamental as the memory of those who were there, seeing what no one else saw. This reflects a common problem in rushed investigations. The pressure to find quick answers can lead to the abandonment of details that, over time, prove to be crucial. And then we have the issue of chronology. If the man was seen at 8:45 p.m., what was he doing there before Madeleine was put to bed? Was he observing, waiting for the right moment? Or does his presence at that time suggest he had more knowledge about the McCann family's routine than we could imagine? This detail, combined with the figure observed by Jane Tanner at 9:15 p.m., forms a pattern that cannot be ignored. Two different accounts made by people who did not know each other describe behaviors that point to a carefully calculated plan. And here is the most weighty point. Why was nothing done with this information? The witness was ignored, and with that, the case lost a crucial opportunity to advance in the first days. Was this just a human error, or was there something more? Some kind of pressure not to deviate from the official narrative? What makes me most uneasy is thinking about the impact this silence had on Madeleine's family. Every day that passes without answers is a day in which the truth seems to drift further away. And all because that night, the right questions were not asked and important accounts were not investigated. This is the kind of error that forces us to reflect. Are we really prepared to handle the complexity of such mysteries? This witness is still alive, and to this day maintains the same story. His words remain like an echo of a truth that may never have been heard the way it should have been. And the lingering question is, are we ready to revisit what was ignored? From here, we begin to chart a new path in this case, connecting points that could finally shed some light on what happened that fateful night. The testimony of the local resident doesn't leave my mind. A man standing in the dark, so close to apartment 5A, yet at the same time out of the radar of the investigations. What was he waiting for? What did he see that night? And most importantly, why was his account dismissed? These are questions that carry an almost unbearable weight because they may contain answers we never got to hear. I keep imagining what he felt while watching that restless figure. Was he just a stranger or someone with a sinister purpose? Sometimes the simplest details, a glance, a hesitant movement, are the ones that stay etched in memory, as if the instinct knew that something was out of place. It's as if that man was aware that something terrible was about to happen. And then comes the doubt that never leaves me. Is all of this still hidden for a reason? A secret, a distraction, or something bigger that we have yet to understand? This is the missing piece deeper into what this silence really means, and how it could be the key to unraveling the mystery of Madeleine McCann. The testimony of the man who saw a suspicious figure near apartment 5A might seem at first glance just another detail in a case already saturated with disconnected information. However, it raises a series of possibilities that could change the course of history. What is most intriguing is the position in which he described the suspect, leaning against a wall, watching the activity around. This behavior, quiet and deliberate, does not fit the pattern of someone lost or just passing by. One of the theories that emerged from this detail is that this figure could have been a lookout, someone strategically positioned to ensure that the operation, if we can call it that, proceeded without interruptions. Imagine the scene, him there, in the dark, attentive to every movement, while another individual waited for the right moment to act. This would explain not only his presence, but also the reason for his nervous behavior, as described by the witness. On the other hand, some believe he was not directly involved in Madeleine's disappearance, but may have seen something or someone that made him uncomfortable. And here comes a disturbing dilemma. Did he realize what was happening and for some reason choose to remain silent? Or did he, even without knowing, witness a crucial moment that went unnoticed both by him and the authorities? Now let's return to the timeline. We know that around 9:15 p.m., Jane Tanner saw a man carrying a child in his arms, walking hurriedly. Tanner's description has similarities with what the local resident reported. Both mentioned someone acting abnormally, but at different times. This leads us to a new hypothesis. What if the figure Jane saw was the same man observed by the resident? The 30-minute difference between the two sightings could suggest that he was moving carefully, studying the area before acting. But there is also the possibility that they were two different people working together, a factor that was never thoroughly explored by the official investigations. Another point of tension arises when we consider that, despite these accounts existing, neither led to a search for suspects based on the provided descriptions. Why didn't investigators dedicate efforts to identify or track these men? Could the pressure to present quick results have led them to dismiss important possibilities? This is one of the deepest conflicts in this case. The decisions made in the first days of the investigation. The Portuguese police were under immense pressure, facing not only local public opinion, but also international coverage. This tense environment led to the prioritization of more concrete leads, such as searching for traces in and around the apartment, leaving accounts like the local residents in the background. But this choice may have come at a high cost. If this man was indeed involved, he had the perfect opportunity to disappear while attention was focused on other aspects of the case. Furthermore, the fact that the testimony was ignored created an additional conflict between the Portuguese and British authorities, with mutual accusations of negligence and lack of coordination. The hypothesis that Madeleine's disappearance was premeditated gained strength when we analyze the behavior described by the resident. The strategic position near the apartment, the vigilant behavior, and the apparent calm indicate that this person knew exactly what he was doing. If we accept this theory, new questions arise. Who else was involved? Were there other accomplices scattered around the area, ensuring that each move was calculated? Or was this man acting alone, taking on the role of observer before carrying out the act itself? On the other hand, some argue that this figure might not have been linked to a larger plan, but rather to a crime of opportunity. He could have been wandering the area, observing the movement, and upon noticing a window of opportunity, a door unlocked or a moment of carelessness, decided to act. This scenario is as disturbing as the first because it reinforces the impact of negligence and chance in cases like this. If it was indeed an impulsive crime, the tragedy takes on an even more anguishing dimension. What could have been different to prevent this from happening? And so we come to the central question: why was this testimony ignored? What leads a potentially crucial lead to be dismissed in an investigation of this magnitude? Some experts believe it was simply a judgment error, while others suggest there was a conscious effort to focus the narrative in other directions, avoiding uncomfortable questions about the logistics of the disappearance. Whatever the reason, the result is the same: a missed opportunity, a detail that, if investigated at the time, could have provided answers that remain out of reach. And that could completely change the way we understand what happened that night. He stated that the man near the apartment was holding something. It wasn't possible to clearly see what it was, but he believed it was a small object wrapped in a cloth or bag. Now think about this. Why would someone stand in front of an apartment holding such an object while watching the surroundings? This detail, so seemingly insignificant, could indicate that the man wasn't just waiting, he was already preparing something. Even more disturbing is the connection that arises when we return to Jane Tanner's account, who saw a man carrying a child 30 minutes later. The description of the movements, quick yet careful, and the direction he was heading raise a question that was never answered. Was the man described by Tanner already at the location before? And if so, what was he initially carrying? Another piece of this puzzle emerges when we compare the accounts. Both the resident and Jane Tanner spoke about the man's appearance, but with subtle differences. While Jane remembered someone slim and of medium height, the local resident mentioned that he seemed more stocky but wore loose clothes, which made it difficult to accurately perceive his physical build. This leads us to an unexpected hypothesis. Could there have been more than one person involved that night? What if the man seen at 8:45 p.m. was there to observe, but the one seen carrying the child was another person acting in conjunction? This possibility was never never seriously considered, but adds an even more complex layer to the case. And then there is the most disturbing detail. During the resident's description, he mentioned something that the police ignored at the time. He stated that the man seemed to be watching, but from time to time, he looked at a fixed point in a darker area of the street where a car was parked. This car was never identified in the official investigations. But years later, during a case review, an unexpected fact emerged. In testimonies collected weeks after the disappearance, another witness claimed to have seen a strange vehicle near the resort that same night. The driver had his head down, as if trying to avoid being noticed, and the car seemed to be poorly parked, almost hidden in the shadow of a tree. Now imagine this: two witnesses, different accounts, but converging on the possibility that this vehicle played a crucial role that night. It could have been the escape point, or even the place where Madeleine was taken before disappearing completely. The negligence regarding these accounts is disconcerting. The Portuguese police did not record the resident's testimony as a priority, and the information about the car only came to light years later when British investigators began reviewing the case. This delay not only compromised the investigation, but also raised a new question. What else was left aside or buried in the confusion of those first days? It's impossible not to feel a sense of frustration when thinking about it. If these accounts had been connected at the time, perhaps we would have a clearer idea of what happened. The man near the apartment, the car parked in the shadows, and Madeleine's disappearance form a line of events that, even today, we still cannot fully trace. And here is the point where theories begin to diverge. Some believe that the man observed by the resident was acting alone, waiting for the right moment to enter the apartment and carry out the kidnapping. Others, however, argue that he was just part of a larger group, and that the parked car was a key element in a meticulously planned operation. This second theory gains strength when we consider that, in cases of child trafficking, it is common for multiple people to be involved, each with a specific role. The man standing near the apartment could be the lookout, while the car's driver would be responsible for transportation. But there is also an even more unsettling hypothesis. What if the man was just following orders? This possibility raises questions about who was really in control of that operation and what this means for Madeleine's disappearance. What impresses me the most, however, is how these details continue to challenge the official narrative. Why were these leads never followed through? Could there have been a conscious effort to keep the focus on other directions, diverting attention from more complicated aspects? These questions do not have easy answers, but what is clear is that the resident's account and the presence of the car near the resort are elements that can no longer be ignored. They not only complicate the timeline, but also open up new possibilities that could change everything we thought we knew about that night. Sometimes the simplest details, a man standing in the dark, a car parked in an unusual place, are the ones that carry the most important answers. Is there still something we can do to connect these pieces? The questions that arise from this new information are as disturbing as they are revealing. The mysterious man, the car parked in the shadows, and the accounts that were never treated with due seriousness form a web of doubts that remains alive, even so many years later. What impacts me the most in this case is the silence. Not just the silence of that night, but what comes from the gaps in the investigations, the leads that were never followed, and the stories that were set aside. This silence is what hurts the most because it prevents answers from being found. Not only for us, but for a family that still seeks justice. And you, what do you think might have happened that night? Are we looking at the right pieces of the puzzle, or is something crucial still hidden in plain sight? I would love to hear your opinion. If you watched until here, comment. I am the voice seeking the truth, so I know you are with me in this search for answers. And tell me, what other mysterious cases would you like to see here on the channel? Your suggestion could become our next episode. In the next video, we will dive into another intriguing mystery, a disappearance that defied all explanations and left questions that were never answered. If you were intrigued by what you saw today, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to follow our investigations. Together, we will continue unraveling the mysteries that time has tried to hide. Until next time, and remember, the truth is out there, but only those who seek can find it.